Hi guys, in this video I'm going to try and restore this old wreck.
Scruffy Crow.
Okay, it was a sad day a while back and it was the very last day of my local gaming club. And one of the things that happened was a lot of the old terrain that had been kicking around the gaming club for some time just sort of portioned out, and I think some of it probably got thrown away. This is something that I rescued, this being the old Citadel siege engine, and obviously being an example that's seen better days. So the notable parts are that it's missing the rest of this arm, so that's where this door should sit onto. So I need to do something to replace that. And obviously the wheels, I had to spend some time digging around to the wreckage of various other bits of terrain to find all the wheels. And they've obviously been snapped clean off there. So that's going to take some work to get them reattached. And then last but not least, I reckon it could do with a little bit of a new paint job. I'm also thinking I'm going to give it a base just out of old bit of hardboard here, just because I like having models on bases. I think the first job we're going to do, I'm looking at this, I don't think it's going to come apart. I'd rather work on it in bits, but then I'd rather not damage it any more than it is. This thing's got quite an ingenious trapdoor mechanism. So once that was fixed on there, winding this little gear down here would bring the drawbridge up. I think that's pretty cool. And I want to obviously get that working and restored. But currently the mechanism down there is all sort of warped. I don't know what I can do about that. I think this is probably the original string, so I'll put that to one side and we can try and reuse that at the end. Another thing that might be cool is possibly getting some little magnets for this bottom trapdoor so it doesn't just flap down all the time when we don't want it to. One of the things I tend to do at the beginning of a restoration job usually is to strip paint. I don't think for the amount of effort that's going to take me is going to be that worthwhile. I might do it with the wheels because they're a little bit easier and they're also a little bit more caked on. To strip paint off plastic, I'd usually use some isopropyl alcohol. This is my go-to at the moment, this or meths, but this doesn't smell quite as bad. But I don't have enough of this stuff to make, fill a pot to dunk this guy in, which is one of the reasons why I'm not bothering. If it was just a case of just dunking it in, I'd probably go for it. However, you might notice that the front is kind of gloss. I think it's probably just a wash that someone's put on there. I'm going to see if I can knock that gloss off at the very least. So there you go, look, that's the brown coming off already. And we're removing that wash and we're taking it back to the black undercoat that someone's given it. So this is working quite well. For the wheels, I've got a little tub of this stuff. They can just dunk in there and I'll look at them in a few hours. So this is one of the foot panels that I've given a bit of a rub with the alcohol compared to where I haven't. And yeah, the brown's coming off quite nicely, so I might bother to go around and clean it all. It's mainly this front part that I'm concerned about getting the details freshened up on actually. So I've got a toothbrush, I'm just getting into all those gaps between the sides just getting the chunkiest bits of the paint out. Some of the thickest painted sections, I've got this metal sculpting tool. I'm just sort of poking the paint out with them and getting into all the cracks and nooks and crannies with it. Not pressing hard, just enough to loosen the paint that's already soft. And then when I can go with the toothbrush, that'll lift out those bits. The rest of the detail on the wood and everything's nice and deep. So although I am going around and just giving it all a clean, partly what I'm trying to do is just sort of strip away the grease and the grime it's gathered over the years. This is a cool little bit. This appears to be a little lever whose job it is to stop the thing from going back round on itself. So it's just attached at both ends. And then has a little nub on it that clocks into these little grooves under here and works like a little ratchet, but it has a crack in it, which is why it was being a bit weird. I'll clean it up now and then I'll try and re-glue it. Okay, currently it looks objectively worse, but I would say it's actually an improvement over how it was looking from a functional sense. I think the next thing we're going to have to look at is this arm here. What I've got here is some 2mm plasticard, which I think 2mm is about the thickness the original arm was, but it'll also give me a little bit of room to play around with the sort of texturing. So first things, I need to work out how long I need my little bit to be. So I want it to come out to there. I need it to be about that thick. I'm just going to score out a shape roughly the right size. One of the cool things about this stuff is you can kind of, once you've got it scored, you can kind of just pop it off. There we go. So now I'm going to fine tune this down. Now this bit doesn't attach to the base of the thing. This is why this is broken off, because there's no attachment point past there. So there's a sort of big gap. You can see I can just put my knife sort of right through there. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that again. I don't know if this bit of plastic here is going to be enough. I would say probably not. I think we're going to have to put some more bits. I don't think there's going to be any particular downside to that. In fact, that gap appears to be almost exactly 2mm. So we'll probably just put another little bit of card just in the end, just to keep this stuck down. Actually, while I'm here, I'm also noticing there's some mould lines on the top of here, so we might as well just catch those. I'll go around in a second and see if I can find any more. So right now I'm making sure that this bit of plastic here, we're going to get that right down to the raw plastic. That will sit on there like that. It's still a bit long across there, but that's fine. I can't see any reason why we couldn't have another cube of plastic on here to help the whole thing stick together. So that's probably what we're going to do. Also, this plastic's got a rough side and a shiny side. I'm just going to take the shiny side down now. Just take that surface off. And there we go. Hopefully that is, we've got that midway down there, and that is now longer than the other side. That's fine because we can finesse that once it's all set in place. And I'm just moving that around, make sure that these two bits of plastic melt together. And I was thinking I was going to have to extend out this, but there's enough of a nub there that I think once we've got that in there and we've got a hole drilled in this side, that will hold itself in quite well. While that's curing, we'll get the rest of the wheels and bits and pieces cleaned up. The wheels have only been in there 10 minutes or so, look, and all the silver paint that was the bit that was annoying me is all wrinkled up, and we'll just basically just wipe off now. And there we go. If I had the time and inclination, that is how clean we could get the whole thing. Probably even a little bit cleaner than that. So basically back to the plastic. If we had enough alcohol and a big enough container to dump the whole thing in. But I'm happy with that, it's fine for now. We did have another little broken section here, so that is going to be, I've just completely drowned this corner in plastic glue, and we're just nudging this little thing back in. So that was only attached to this bottom plate, but now it's going to be sturdier than ever because it's going to be attached to this side wall and this other side bit here. Also currently taking the opportunity to just very slightly bevel the edges of some of these very moulded plastic looking pieces. You know, they've gone to a lot of effort to make the fronts of these sort of curved and look like sort of worn planks, but these bottom edges here were very sharp, so we're just going to take a bit of that sharpness off, make them more like they do on the top side. And while I'm still messing with it as well, we're going to have to think about putting the wheels on. So I've gone and found this bit of styrene rod, and I reckon I'm going to use this. It's quite flexible and it's only 2mm, but I think I'm going to use it kind of like a pin, because all the wheels are broken, and I think if we just have the back of this circle flush with here, I think that's going to be okay. That's going to be just enough clearance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove what's left of these nubs where they were protruding out. I might start with the snips. And then I'm going to take my file and I'm just going to file those down as well, just so they're nice and flat but also rough, so they'll take the glue better. Once we've filed those, I'll also file the backs of the wheels. Test again, see if that actually is enough clearance. Yeah, it's going to be fine, I reckon. So what my plan is to measure where the centre of these holes should be, drill a 2mm hole, glue in a bit of rod, drill the same hole on that side, glue in the rod, and then it's all plastic, and we'll just have this nice flat section against that flat section with this bit of plastic going through the both, and then I think they'll be more than secure enough then. And then the other thing securing the wheels will be the fact that I'm going to glue them all down to a base, which will sort of stabilise the whole thing, especially once we've got a bit of sand and glue underneath. It'll be rock solid then. Still messing with this thing. I've got a 2mm drill bit here that I'll be using for all sorts of things like that rod. Currently I'm just going to try and drill a little 2mm hole down into the end of this post here. So this is like the support beam up the top. Yeah, that should do it. And then I've got some of these tiny little 2mm magnets. Just gonna post that in there. And then when we've got this door on, gonna just a little spot of super glue to start with. And there we go, we've got that magnet sitting flush. So once that's painted, I don't think you'll see it. And then I've popped the other magnet on top. And now I'm gonna sit this down where it would sit if it was closed. Turns out I miscalculated where that magnet goes. The construction of this is a bit more sensible than I thought. So that means the magnet actually has to be just in the end of this wooden beam rather than at the end of it. Something a bit more like that, I think. And there's it in place. Perfect. Okay, at this point I'm going to make an attempt to get the wheels back on. I've started by finding the centres of each of these and then just drilling this. It's a 2mm hole. I've squirted a little bit of glue in there, just plastic cement, and I'm just going to pop the rods in. That's quite a tight fit. Put a bit too much glue on that one. And then I'm just going to snip. I'm just going to leave, I don't know, about that much. I'm going to do that to each of these, basically replacing the old axles that were there on this. So now I've got my tiny ruler and I'm just measuring from the top here, and I think the centres of these, because I can kind of see where the circle used to be on this one quite well. So the centres of these are going to be 7mm from the top. And I think I can kind of eyeball the centre that way. And then the wheel should just slot on. So I'm going to go around and do the rest of those and then glue them in place. And we're going to be pretty generous with the glue here because we want these to be as sturdy as possible. Because obviously by the fact they aren't attached now means they were one of the weakest points of the model before. That's why we've used plastic pegs rather than just metal pins. Just, I think having all the plastic merged together should be quite sturdy. Now I'm kind of torn about how to put the wheels. Try and make them all look randomly different directions. There we go. I'm just going to stand it up, let that set. The reason I'm like setting it stood up so I know that all the wheels kind of touching. Just adjusting them all now while the glue's melting, just to make sure that they all sort of look right. Okay, so the wheels are all nice and solid. I'm not going to do any damage to them now. And this glue is all obviously set. That was done a couple of days ago now. I'm just going to take my file. I'm just going to rough up all the outer surface on this. And then I'm going to try and work out where that hole needs to be. I think I might have made that a little bit high, so as I widen it out with the end of my knife, I'm just going to carve that down. So, cool. Yeah, I've got that sitting flat now, so I'm confident that this will slot back in. But it's not in the right height. I hadn't kind of considered that. It needs to be a little bit further up. It's alright, we'll just keep carving until the hole gets to the right place. And I said I was considering sort of lengthening out this peg, but I don't think we need to. I think we can kind of keep it the length it is. It means that while we're constructing this, I can just kind of pull that aside and pop that bit back out. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get my green stuff. And I'm just going to cover this whole arm. And this is why we roughed up the surface before, so when I stick this on, it will have something a little bit better to stick to. And then I'm shaping the green stuff, and I'm going to get it roughly the same shape, show my fingers here, as the sort of plank on this side. We're going to match that there. And you will notice as well that that hole we spent all that time making is now being sort of filled in. That's fine, that's kind of on purpose. I'm just going to pull some green stuff around this side as well. Okay, so now we've got it roughly the right shape. I'm going to follow this pattern that we've got on here, and I'm just going to drag lines through, try and keep them the same sort of thickness. Okay, something a bit like that. I'm pretty happy with the way that sort of texture's looking. I'm just going to make sure that there's no crazy bits that I don't like on there. And then I'm going to pop the door back on. And we're going to get that nice and straight. Oh look, we broke the other peg off. That's somewhat frustrating. Either way, moving that around in there should have given us the indent we need in this side in exactly the right place. I'm just going to, careful not to touch the sides, I'm just going to try and deepen down the hole in the middle there. Make sure my lines on that side are still good. I'm not worried about fingerprints or anything at this stage. And while we've got the green stuff out, there's some gaps on these skins here where it was put together. I'm just going to fill in a couple of those as well, make that nice and snug. Just a little sausage, ram that in there. And I'm just going to check around anywhere else that I think might need a little gap fill or anything like that. Make sure that we've got everything how we'd want it. Might do a little gap fill around there once that side's dry. I don't think there's that much that's going to need doing. I've just spotted that we didn't put that little clip back, so let's find that and put that back in as well. So the two parts are broken now, so I'm just going to pop a good little dollop of plastic glue and get that on both ends and just let them sit for a little while. Just dabbed off a little bit of the excess, and we're going to meet the two parts up. Oh, it feels good, it feels like it's reacting. Pop it back into place because I think that's probably the best way of keeping it the right size and shape. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this rod and I'm going to flatten out a section, something a bit like that. So a nice little flat profile section, and then cut that off. I'm just going to glue that onto the top of there because don't trust that joined just in the glue. So I pop that on there. And then when that's all set, assuming it all still works and I don't have to completely remake the part, you know, this stuff's quite flexible, so that should redo the job. And what I'll do is I'll just carve that side down a little bit once it's all dry, to make sure that it's all it blends in a little bit better than it does currently. Okay, all my green stuff's set. So what I've been doing now is I've just got this top line here and I've just been filing that down so it just goes nicely in line with that bit. And I'm going to do the same on the bottom. Take this chunk off, I might use my knife for that first. And then I'll file it down so it completely goes in line. And then I will also bring the file across the top here, because obviously these are detailed, but the actual top surface is almost entirely flat. So I'm going to do this as well on the top, and we'll get a nice flat surface with those lines in there. And sometimes for scraping green stuff, yeah, sort of needle files aren't always the best because they get a bit clogged up. So that's when an emery board's also quite a useful tool. There we go, something a bit like that. I think it looks a little bit less like green stuff, and hopefully once that's painted up, unless you inspect it closely, you'll not really notice that that's not the original arm. That feels nice and sturdy, and the little notch in there is enough to put the door on, which is open and closing nice and straight. Okay, while I was faffing, I actually ended up putting a slightly larger magnet, one that looks like it's been reclaimed from somewhere, on that end bit, because because I wanted that to be slightly tighter. So that's a little bit firmer now with that larger magnet on that side. Still got the tiny one there, but when they marry up, it's just that little bit firmer now. So I'll go over that with a little bit of green stuff and try and hide that in. All right, we're giving the siege tower a break for a bit, but I measured the bottoms and we're gonna go for a 10 centimeter, so that's to there, so just past the side of the wheels. Oh, maybe I wanna go a bit longer. So I was thinking 10 centimeters by 13, and that should give me the clearance. So I've marked that out on this bit of hardboard, and it'd look something like that. We don't want loads of base, I just want to give it some base. I think that's going to look just fine. I did go and dig out my big knife. It wouldn't have been impossible with the scalpel, but a lot easier, something a bit chunkier. All right, I've got it cut out. It's a little bit rough and ready, but I think it's pretty square. So I've got an emery board here, so you could just use regular sandpaper, and I'm just going to do my best to flatten off a lot of the edges. Honestly, I'd be better off with a bit of MDF, but this hardboard's what I had to hand. So, all right, I've got something pretty much square, and it's got some nice smooth edges. So I'm going to glue my siege tower. I'm going to glue it on there. I'm going to use some regular super glue to start with, and I'm going to do a nice, because that's quite a porous surface, I'm going to do a nice blob on the bottom of each wheel. And then when that's dry, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put PVA all over the top of the wood and do a normal layer of sand, and that'll help lock in those wheels and make that nice and sturdy. We've got the sand on now, so once that's dry, we're pretty much ready for the undercoat. I've reattached this bit. There's no glue holding it on, so it's just like 2 pegs pressed in. So I might take it out again before we paint it, but it is working. It's clicking again, so that's plenty flexible, but now it's nice and strong, so the little added bit. On the fighting platform, I'm just currently adding some little lines down the sides here, so the planks have got a bit of texture on the ends. So I'm just following the lines from above, just using the end of my file, edge of my file, to score in some little lines. Not deep, just something that the dry brush will pick up a little bit. Just give it a little bit more visual interest. I've also gone round and just beveled the edges on the bottom a little bit where it was like sharp, obviously moulded plastic, just to make all that look a bit more natural and match the top. Okay, we've got the whole thing undercoated now. So this is the main part. I think it was really worth getting into all those nooks and crannies, because that's, with the grey primer on, looking really smart and clean all over. I think it's absolutely, we've made such a difference with this now, and everything is just looking smart and clean. And I've spent a bit of extra time making sure all the insides are all nice as well. It's still going to be a lot trickier to paint than the outsides, but I think we can do a better job than how it was. I can't remember if I showed this yet, but we've got the wood grain on the magnets kind of tidied up a little bit, so you're still noticeable because I'm not amazing at it, but I think that looks alright, and it shuts really nicely. And we've got the ladders still separate, and the top door still separate, because I think that'll be just a little bit easier to paint separate, and we can still slot that on when we need to. And I think that arm's actually looking really good. So at first glance, I don't think you'll necessarily notice that's not the original. So to painting then, it should be quite straightforward. We'll go for this Idrin Flesh all over, and then wash it with the Earthshade, and then do the Zandri Dust. It's a little bit different to how I normally do things. I'd normally go Idrin, Zandri, and then wash to pull them together. But I found on things with nice thick wood grains like this, that having the Zandri last almost gives a sort of, I don't know, I prefer the look on big wood stuff anyway. In order to get this painted nice and quickly, I've got this brush. It's a little bit bigger than the one I'd normally go for, but they didn't have any of those. This end will definitely be spot on. I'm not sure how useful this end will be, but I'm going to give it a go anyway, because you know, the bigger the brush, the faster this will go. All right, let's see how this big brush does. Oh, that's nice actually. That's instantly in all the nooks and crannies. And it's a nice even coat straight on. Yeah, this isn't going to take too long at all. If I need it, I've also got this large craft brush to get into all the nooks and crannies inside, and I think I will. But the big brush should make fairly quick work of the insides as well. Because it's nice and puffy, we can kind of get around all the edges. And like I've said on other similar videos, I'm sure this would be a lot quicker and more efficient with an airbrush. This is the sort of thing I'd use an airbrush for, but I don't have one and I can't be bothered with them. So big puffy brushes is the way forward. This bottom downstairs is really tricky to get my brush into because of this sort of winding gear in the middle. I'm trying to work out ways I can sneak a brush in and onto that floor sideways. I think rather than using Rhinox hide on the base, because I'm going to use quite a bit of it thinned down, I'm going to just use this acrylic craft paint, which will probably be my next stage. Okay, as you can see, the base is all painted now, and I've also taken some of the same brown and put it around the edge of the wheels. I'm not completely sold on the shade, but it'll have to do. And I'm sure it'll look better once I've got some highlights on there. I think for the hides we're going to use this sort of Zandri Dust and Midland Flesh, and I don't think I'm going to use a wash on it maybe, or if I do I'm going to use some of this soft tone. Yeah, I think something like that sort of order might make the front look quite good. So yeah, so next thing is going to be a fairly generous wash of Earthshade. Alright, that took quite a bit of time even with the big brush, but I think I've got a nice even wash over everything. That's really brought out the grains. Half the challenge was getting this much wash onto a model, and half the task was dealing with all the drips and build up and stuff. And still try and make it look nice and even rather than too streaky, even though we'll be highlighting up. Alright, this has pretty much dried now. Just make sure I can still get this front door open. Yeah. Looking good. So I've got the Zandri Dust now, and we're going to use this in a couple of places. One, I'm going to start the hides with it. And then two, I'm going to give all of this a dry brush with the same stuff. Still using a relatively large brush, got this nice little chisel tip one. And we're still going straight out of the pot because I'm lazy. And this stuff actually applies quite nicely. But we're taking more care than we have in previous steps. And like I'm painting a house, I'm going to start with the edges nice and neat. And then I can just go in the middles and do that a lot quicker. Okay, so I have blocked in that front bit, given it the first layer. It's going to need another layer, and then I have started dry brushing that side. So that's what it was looking like with just the wash, kind of sloppy. But then I think that looks a lot neater once we've got this dry brush on. I'm using this big old craft brush, which is making fairly quick work of getting that dry brush on. You can really see all these details. I think all three colours come through quite well. I think that's probably going to be more or less the finished colours. Alright, all my bits and pieces, sort of accessories, are at the same sort of stage now. I'm just finishing up dry brushing the skins on the front here. And I'm just sort of going for a kind of light tanned leather sort of look. So this is Midland Flesh. It's what I normally use, sort of human skin sorts of colours. But I think over the over the Zandri Dust, I think that gives quite a good effect. You can't really see it, but it is really nicely picking up a second layer of detail with this on there. So I think I'm still going to try a sort of light wash on that. So some of this soft tone, just to pick out all the shadows and the low lights, and then I might go back over again with the Midland Flesh just to pick out these like solid highlights again. And I think that'll be enough. I said I think I'm pretty happy with the wood. There are a few bits that I'm going to go back, sort of like on this corner maybe, and give a bit more of a brush to. But I think in general, I think that looks really nice. The ladders I am just slowly painting in Mammoth base, so like an ivory colour, all the ropes, and then I'll give them a little brown wash to bring out the individual details. But I quite like how striking that is. I've also used a bit of that Mammoth white just to finish up the base, so that base colour is more or less what all the rest of my bases look like. So it'll match in with the just sort of the majority of stuff that I do. Okay, so it appears I've lost one of the original strings, and my attempt to recolour it kind of went a bit odd. It's not the end of the world. But what I've used instead is some of this sort of waxed thread that I had just laying around. It works, so I've got it all strung back up. So if we turn this way, you can see that it lifts the drawbridge. The problem is, because this stuff's a little bit stiff, it doesn't work the other way particularly. So if I go the other way, it gives me the flex to do it, but it doesn't actually, there's not enough weight there for it to do it automatically. I'm not really sure how I could get by and change that, but it's cool. The platform works. Okay, so here's the soft tone all across the front, and if I'm honest, I'm not loving it. It kind of reminds me of how this thing looked when we started, but obviously a lot of that shine will come off as it dries, so that shouldn't be as big a problem. And we're going to do another dry brush, so hopefully I'll get it looking like how I want. I'm currently just sticking the washers on some of these sort of bone bits for the bindings. So there's one there. And then we've got the ladders to do. And that just sort of shows you the separate strings, as well as putting a little bit of shadow around them. So once they're dry from that, I'll be gluing them back in. And there's little marks on the backs of the doors and sort of cut out this there. So I'll try and match the same ladders that came out of each section back in there, and I'll use super glue to put them back in, because I think with all the layers of paint we're probably not going to stand much of a chance with plastic glue. Actually, that art's dried. That is looking a lot better, and I have the ladders in and they've gone in quite nicely, so the whole thing's back together now. I've also gone round and tidied up that base frame in black. I think that really helps it look like a model. I still need a few little bits of this to dry, so I can't really dry brush that yet. So I'm going to do the last colour, which is going to be some pig iron, which is a dark silver, sort of bolt gun metal type colour. And I am going to do every stud, I'm going to just give it a little covering of that pig iron. So every single nail on the whole thing. So that is going to take some time. I'm also going to do the wheel rims and parts of the hubs. This is going to take quite a long time, but there's something kind of therapeutic about it. And we end up with something like that. So we've got details like that, and then that last dry brush just brings out every edge and wrinkle. Contrast again, we've got that. That's what it was looking like. And that, so it looks way more 3D. So now once I finish this, I can do all the studs. Okay, at the moment I'm doing a little bit more work on the base. I've thrown some tufts on there, some of the flowers that I don't really be using for much else. And we're going to add some of this grass. Now this is sort of almost like recycled grass. It's just mixed of a bunch of different grasses I have. Well, my theory is that it'll fit with pretty much any terrain I've got. So I'm going to use a paintbrush. I've got some glue and I'm just going to try and do some random shapes on here. Probably should have waited until I washed. I was going to do a black wash on these wheels. Yeah, really should have waited to do that first, but started, so I'll finish. Grabbed a paper towel so I can recycle this. I'm just going to pour generous amounts of the grass all over. Get it right in that gap. And then tap off the excess. Give it a little blow. And we've got some nice, super generic fantasy basing. Obviously, I know that basing it sort of, you know, is... If I hadn't based it, it'd fit on any table, any terrain, you know. I'm aware of that. Basing it kind of, you know, ties it to that sort of grassy base. But honestly, I think the plus sides and, for me, the aesthetic of having a base beats out any of those problems. All my studs are finally done, and I think they were worthwhile. I was going to give them all an individual little black pin wash, but I'm not going to bother now. But I am going to do black just round the sort of wheels here on these frames, just to sort of darken that down and then put that shadow in just in this gap here. It's subtle, but it's just to sort of knock off the shine as well. And with that last wash in place, it is complete. So there we have it, the finished product. So yeah, we've got all the ladders back in, we've got the magnet on the back there, all the studs are painted. I'm much happier with the colour of those skins now. I've got the mechanism working again. Yeah, it's been a great little project. So this is what it looked like when we first got our hands on it. And then obviously, yeah, this is what it looks like now. And yeah, completely worthwhile. I can't wait to get it out on the table at the upcoming Oathmark Siege event next week. And that's all for this video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Maybe subscribe for more. And as ever, thanks for watching. Bye.